Never coming to you from a studio, I have no products to sell. Lamont at large, always at the scene of the crime. Today we're in Moon Township, Pennsylvania. If the term human scum was in the dictionary, this clown's picture would be right under that description. This is Gary Lee Starr, one of the bigger scumbags I've ever spoken about on my channel. We're gonna walk to the location of a insidious murder. I'm gonna tell you the story as quickly as I can. You know how I roll. Let's get rocking and rolling. Currently, it's February 20th, 1988, and it is very cold. It is frigid out here in Moon Township. We're about 15 minutes west of Pittsburgh, and if you ever fly into Pittsburgh, the airport is in Moon Township, and this is where you would be touching down. So on that night, it's in the teens. It is cold. Definitely not a night that you want to be walking home from work. And for one 21-year-old James Fletcher, well, it looks like that's going to be happening. He works as a cook at a pizza joint somewhere in the area. That night, it's a little slow, so his boss tells him, hey, after you're done cleaning up, you can go on and head home. He's like, all right, cool. It's Saturday night, and you know, hey, there's nothing wrong with getting off of work early on that day. So he goes outside, and he's waiting for his ride from his father-in-law, or soon-to-be father-in-law, Gary Lee Starr. Now, he called him and he said, hey, I'm getting off of work early, you know, I'll be waiting. Well, now it's about 11:30 p.m. and he still hasn't shown up yet. And it's 11:45 and finally it's midnight. Screw it. Okay, well, I guess he must have fell asleep or whatever. So he ends up getting a ride home from the pizza delivery driver. Driver drops James off here at 283 Moon Clinton Road. So he drops him off somewhere in one of these buildings, and James goes up to his apartment. Now he is in a relationship with a woman. Her name is Wanda Starr. She's 20 years of age. She has a child, a little child, like under 2 years of age, from a previous relationship, and they're engaged to be married. So normally Wanda will wait for James to get off of work, or sometimes she'll fall asleep. So he opens the door, and in the living room, Wanda's on the couch, sleeping, covered up by a blanket. Now, you know, he playfully pokes her in the ribs or something like that, and she doesn't move. Now, mind you guys, it's cold, so he pulls the blanket from her, so, you know, she would wake up by the cold. And instead of her playfully slapping at him to get away, he sees the blood encrusted leg of his girlfriend hanging halfway off of the couch. And the most horrific scream emanates through one of these buildings right here on the property. This guy, James, he is going nuts. Now, mind you guys, by the time now, it's about 1 o'clock in the morning. So he runs out of the building and he is hollering and he's yelling at the top of his lungs. He's saying, my girlfriend is dead, or she's gotten beat up. My girlfriend, I think she's dead. Somebody beat her up. Somebody help me. He's just screaming, screaming, screaming. And he's banging on all of these doors right here at the apartment. But, you know, they're probably thinking this guy is either nuts or they're worried. And I'm sure somebody is calling 911 because he is literally beyond frantic. And he's just banging on the door like, somebody help, somebody help. It is pitch silent out here except for James screaming. So he ends up going to one of these homes across the street from where I'm currently at right now. So he's banging on the houses. Finally, somebody opens the door. It's like, what the hell is your problem? And he goes, please call 911. My girlfriend, she's covered in blood. You know, I think she's dead. So by this time now, several people in this complex have called 911. So Moon Township Police and paramedics, they come here to this building right here, And by the time they get into the apartment, one of the police officers, he already knows that she's dead. Took her pulse and everything. Now, this is a crime scene because this is a murder. She has several stab wounds all over her body, all over her chest, her neck, hands. So the detective in the case comes up here and they have to pronounce her dead, but it has to be done, you know, legally anyways, by the one of the paramedics. So he tells the paramedic, don't touch anything, just do what you got to do to make sure that you can declare her deceased. And he does, and then they tell the paramedics to, you know, get out. By the time 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, this place is covered with police cars, several detectives. Moon Township, it doesn't get a lot of the crime that is in Pittsburgh, but it does have its issues for sure. So as they're investigating the crime scene, one of the detectives, he goes and he's like checking everything, and he notices that there's like a yellow shirt or something like that in the bathtub, and it looked like the guy, whoever killed her, made some kind of an attempt to clean everything up. And now the police, they have the task of knocking on every single door in the apartment building and these homes, surrounding areas, just trying to see if anybody has seen or heard of anything. While they're doing that, Wanda was taken to the, I want to say, the Allegheny County Coroner's Office for autopsy, and this poor girl was stabbed about 34, 35 times. And, you know, they don't have any evidence of any kind of rape or sexual assault. But whoever did this, there was some kind of deep-rooted, like kind of like a crime of passion or something like that. So the detectives, well, you know, the first person they're going to want to talk to is her fiance. They're going to want to talk to James. Now, a lot of these smaller townships around Pittsburgh and in Pennsylvania, they normally will rely on a bigger county for almost any kind of case that they deem serious, which this is one. So the Allegheny Crime Lab, they're the ones that are going to be conducting the investigation. So a couple of detectives, Sergeant Howard Servone and Detective Dave Schwab, they're the ones that are going to be in charge of everything. Now, they're talking to each other. They're talking to several people in the apartment complex, and they're going through their notes. When they originally had discovered Wanda, she was on the couch, and she was in the fetal position with one of her legs kind of dangling over the couch. She had a pullover top on, and her sweats had been pulled inside out, but not completely, to where her sweats were basically hanging off of one of her ankles, like pulled inside out. Looks like this is a crime of like a sex crime. But like I said, the autopsy couldn't determine whether that was true or not. But whoever did this, more than likely had some kind of deep-rooted, possibly hatred for her. If this was a random crime, in their mind, they're not going to be thinking that this woman's going to be stabbed 35 times. So there was some kind of hatred involved. And also, this crime was not based on any kind of a robbery, because she had on 2 gold necklaces and her purse was on the floor unopened right next to her. So whoever did this, their motive is not robbery, that's for sure. So they take James down to the Moon Township Police Department, and they start questioning him about where he was. Now, he was telling them that he worked at a pizza place about 3 miles away from here, and they quickly confirmed his alibi. So based on him being at work and them talking to several of the residents in the apartment complex, it was determined that she was last seen around 4 p.m. and he was already at work by that time. And then they were asking James, like, you know, just go through your day. What happened? He wakes up, eats, talks with his fiance Wanda, and then Gary Lee Starr gives him a ride to work. But before he gives him a ride, he says, you know what? He throws him the keys to his car. He has this old Buick. And he says, you can go ahead and use the car. Now, James, when he got the keys from Gary, he thought that was kind of weird because this dude, Gary, never let anybody drive his vehicle. So he said that he borrowed the car from Gary, who also happened to be the manager of the complex. And he's the one that helped them get the apartment because, you know, your 2 young kids probably got bad credit, maybe an eviction. So had a hard time getting an apartment and getting the money deposit together. So he helped them out by getting that apartment. So as they're talking to him and quickly figuring out that he's not the guy that they're looking for, they're asking about, well, where's their dad at? You're gonna want to talk to the dad, and nobody's seen this guy. This guy, he's been gone for like the better part of like 24 hours now. So they talked to Gary's wife, second wife. We'll get into that in a minute. So they talked to Gary's second wife, and they're like, hey, where's your husband? And she says, I don't know. The last time I seen him was yesterday afternoon around 5:36 p.m. He had a cold and he was really, really feeling bad, feeling sick. So he said he was gonna go to the hospital because he thought he was coming down with something. So he left. And they're talking to the wife, they're talking to the wife's friends. And one of the wife's friends has stated that on that day, around like 5 o'clock, something around there, that Gary had come into his apartment holding the hand of Wanda's son. And that one of them noticed that the Wanda's little kid had looked like it had like blood or some kind of weird like stain on the back of his neck. So Gary had took him into the bathroom to clean him up. And as they're doing that, they're noticing that Gary is acting, he's not acting nervous, but a little peculiar. So you factor that in with this guy who doesn't really have a known job. Well, where the hell is he? So they put a like a be on the lookout for on this Gary Lee Starr. He's driving like a mid 70s old Buick. Might have been a Regal, probably not a Regal, could have been a Dynasty. The make of the car escapes me right now. So they're looking for this guy, and now there's, I guess, what you would call a dragnet. This guy is not, he's not like a suspect, but he's what you call a person of interest, being that, well, it became that way because after doing a background check on Gary Lee Starr, it looks like he did a little bit of time in prison. Because as I was talking about before, that was Gary's second marriage. His first one was to Linda Starr. And on April 7th, 1972, after accusing her of cheating on him, he calmly walks upstairs, pulls out his 12-gauge shotgun, and shoots her twice in the head, in effect blowing her head off. After he's done, he calls the police and says, hey, you might want to come over here because I just murdered my wife. Now, he was arrested, tried, and convicted of that crime, and he received a life sentence. However, about 5 or 6 years later, based on some technicality or another, because the court did not allow him to withdraw his guilty plea, he was allowed a new trial. And since the prosecutor didn't want to go through all of that over again, for some unknown reason, they go ahead and give Gary a term of 7 to 20 years for involuntary manslaughter. And within about 3.5 years, he was paroled. So now, only serving 8.5 years, this guy, after murdering his wife, is free. So he gets back possession of his kids, and he wants to make a new, fresh start. So he takes his kids, and they all move down to Florida. So they would stay down there for a few years until he comes back up to Pennsylvania. Now, later on, about 48 hours after the murder of Wanda Starr, police finally tracked down Gary Lee Starr in his mid-1970s tan-colored Buick with Florida license plates. They take him down to Moon Township Police Department, and as they're talking to him, they're not telling him what they know about the murder. They're not really telling him that they suspect him of committing the crime. They're not telling him that his wife gave the police a pair of pants that he was seen wearing that day of the murder, and on the pants were speckles of blood, his daughter's blood. So as they're talking to him, a very disgusting story comes out. And to make a long story short, Gary starts telling the police that since his daughter was 14 years of age, that they were involved in an incestuous relationship, and that her child was the product of that relationship. I don't know if that is the truth or not. I don't know why this pig would say that, whether it be a lie or not. That's what was said, shocking the police. So after he finally confesses, or not confesses, but says, oh, I must have blacked out. I must have blacked out and did that. And so they're telling him, okay, well, Gary, so why did you black out? Why did you black out? He says, well, Wanda, she stole some rent money. And I went to her apartment to get the rent money. And she's denying it. She said, I didn't take your money. I don't know what you're talking about. And he starts calling her a liar. They start arguing back and forth. And this is his words. He tells the police that my daughter tried to seduce me. She started to take her clothes off and try to bind me over with sex to forget about the money. And that's when I blacked out and I killed her. So these police officers are absolutely besides themselves. They can't believe that they're listening to this disgusting story. And so after his story is done, they arrest him and they charge him with the murder of his daughter. Now, because of the murder of his first wife, now they're going for the death penalty. So it would be about a year or so later after the trial when he was found guilty of the premeditated murder of his 20-year-old daughter, Wanda Starr, and he's sentenced to die via the electric chair. Now, this was an odd part to the story. This guy, Gary Lee Starr, was in the wing of the jail where there was no television. So he was really bored. So he wrote a letter to the judge asking if they can just kind of proceed with the trial and hurry up and sentence him to death because there was a TV on death row. So the judge honors his wishes and sentences him to death. However, later on, due to yet again another technicality, his death sentence is reversed and he's ordered a new trial. The reason why for that is because he was not allowed during his murder trial to represent himself. He was forced to use a court-appointed attorney. And because of that, he got away from death row. And again, the prosecuting attorneys not wanting to go through yet another trial, expensive, long trial, they finally just said, okay, plead guilty to first-degree murder and we'll just sentence you to life. And that's exactly what happened. And currently, right now, he is in some prison hellhole somewhere in the state of Pennsylvania. One of the biggest pieces of filth that you would ever want to lay your eyes on. 3 hours later, and the sun has set in the darkness here, and it took me a very, very long time to find this grave. The map that the office gave me was very confusing, and it was a very badly drawn map, and by the time I realized it, they had closed their office doors, and I was getting ready to leave town, and I said, let me just try 45 more minutes. And it worked, and I found Linda Mary Starr. This is the woman that he brutally murdered for no reason at all. And buried next to her is her daughter, Wanda Lynn Starr. Wanda was only 4 years of age when she was standing right where I'm at. Right where I'm at, over 50 years ago. 50 years ago. Just me saying that, we are all getting older, and we are lucky to still be here to get older. And that man murdered both his wife and his daughter. One of the more disgusting stories I've ever done, for sure. And she was 4 years old, standing right where I'm at, crying, wondering why her mother was sleeping. I don't know if at 4 years old, if children really understand the finality of death, but I could not comprehend in a 4-year-old brain that I possess that I can just know what that's like. Boy, am I glad that I stayed, because I was getting ready to leave, and I stayed. So I wish I had more pictures for this story, but some stories, there's just not many pictures. Rest in peace to both Linda and Wanda. Okay, guys, I'm out of here. Next stop. Well, I don't really know. I had no plans on going east past Pittsburgh, but I don't know. I don't know where I'm going. But wherever it is that I go, I'll take you with me.